Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and today I'm going to review this 15-in-1 Must tool air quality monitor that I received from Banggood. And as you can see, it is a sizable little box with a big screen on the front, and this measures various properties of the room air quality, and it shows them in this nice LCD screen. It is battery powered, so it can run several hours from a battery, and then you can also connect to the USB-C and for charging, or if you want to operate it from the mains power. It also has a built-in Wi-Fi, so it connects to the internet, and you can pair it with your Tuya Smart application, so you can view all these readings over your phone as well. So today I want to give a quick overview of what this data that you can see on this device, what it measures. And I have also tried to do some basic testing. I was trying to set up some scenarios. I was trying to use it at home and then, collect some measurements and also collect my reflections of how this could be useful in your home environment. I'm finding it a little bit difficult to film this, especially because it has this very nice reflective screen on the top, or plastic on the top, so it reflects my ring light, which is just around my camera. And if you look at the screen from the top, you can see the different values that it measures and what information this device is going to give you. So right on the top you have the date and the time, and you have a Wi-Fi symbol. You also have a small speaker, means that the alerts are active, and also like a battery indicator. I didn't have to set any of the time and the date. It syncs automatically once I connect it to the internet, and I didn't find any options to change the date format or the time format, so that's how it comes. And below that you see the temperature and the humidity, and by the way, if I push the button on the side, I can change the temperature from between Fahrenheit and Celsius, and then you can see the humidity. So below that you have the main reading, which is the AQI. So this is air quality indicator. That's basically just a number which is derived from the CO2, the PM2.5 and the PM10 values. So not all the values that you saw on the screen, but these values from the screen. So you would notice that sometimes some of the values would go high, but the air quality indicator doesn't change. That's because it only takes the CO2, the PM2.5 and the PM10 into account. So this is just a general indication of the air quality, and the colors are not really good in this camera, but everything is shown in green, which is like, it's all fine, and then they turn to amber or orange, which is like the sort of like the medium alert, and then when the values are really, really high, then they will go red. And I will show you documentation in a couple of minutes so you can see what these values are. So moving on, next we have CO2 and CO, so carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. So that's basically just a carbon dioxide. So this could be a very good indicator if the air, let's say inside the house or in the room, is used because the carbon dioxide is building up. And of course, if you have something which uses up carbon dioxide, so for example, open flames or a fireplace or anything like that. So I think it's an interesting, it's a very useful indicator. And to be honest, most of the sensors that I've seen usually measure carbon dioxide, but not carbon monoxide. So that could be also a very important indicator, especially if you have incomplete combustion, then instead of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide is getting produced. But I guess in most cases, carbon dioxide is the most typical pollutant, and that's why that's the main measurement. And then below that you have the PM2.5, PM10, and on the other side PM1 and PM0.3. So that's particulate matter. So that's all the dust particles that are in the air, and all the numbers mean the micron size. So you can see 2.5 micron, and then all these values are milligram per cubic meter. So that's the concentration within the air. So I'm not really sure what device or what sensor they are using for this measurement, because the whole unit is sealed. There's no documentation on the website or in the small leaflet that I have here. Because I have worked with PM sensors before, and they usually only measure like PM 2.5 and 10 or PM1, and then for the others they give an estimate. So they have some sort of mathematical formula how they calculate the others. I mean, obviously, this is not a very expensive device, so there could be some, generalization in some of these measurements. So some of these are not, maybe not physically measured, but only calculated by some formula. So probably, just keep this in mind. And once we finish with the PM sensors, we have two more measurements here. So formaldehyde, that's on the top, and then the TVOC, so total volatile organic compound. And I think these are very important measurements as well, because these values, indicate some sort of organic compound. And for example, I have a lot of headaches from childhood. So, and if I notice that if I'm in a closed room with no ventilation and the air is stale, I usually have headaches. And I always thought that maybe this is related to the CO2 buildup in a room. Let's say if, a lot of people are in the room and the windows are not open. But since I had this device and I was monitoring these values, I noticed that it's not so much the CO2 which goes up, but it's the other two, the formaldehyde or the TVOC. So actually, I think these are more important indicators of the air quality and how you perceive the air quality and how you might have some sort of reaction to that, like headaches, irritation, nausea, coughing, something like that. I mean, coughing could be the, the particulate matter as well. So I was reading up some articles, which I'm also going to link in the video's description, but it turns out that formaldehyde is also used in a lot of wood products. So when, soft woods and plywoods are manufactured, they use formaldehyde, but it's also used in a lot of house cleaning products in order to kill bacteria and other pathogens. And actually that I noticed as well, because this has been sitting on my desk and I was cleaning the desk and I had a rug which was, with some like wood cleaner or something like, that's a general cleaner. It was soaked. And then this guy started to go off. And it was the formaldehyde reading which was showing orange and maybe even red. So that's an interesting one, which I haven't really noticed. And I also noticed that, sometimes when the formaldehyde goes up, it's also the TVOC, which also goes up. So TVOC is the total volatile organic compounds. And this is also like a combination factor or a combination index, which indicates various compounds, carbon-based chains that are in the room. So again, that could be from a lot of different factors. There was a very nice document, also going to link it down that. And this document specifically says that the bad odors and the stale air can also indicate the elevated amount of TVOC. So at the moment, I'm recording all my videos in a very small office, or that's my small study. And I don't know if you've noticed, but these values are very slowly going up, and the formaldehyde is already showing in orange, so that's sort of like the elevated value. And obviously I'm sitting in the room, so I'm talking, and what else? I mean, like, usual human activities, probably you are sweating a little bit or something else. So you are adding all these compounds and molecules to the room. And this device seems to be picking this up and once I finish the recording and I open the door, I have the door closed, so rest of the family doesn't bother me when I'm doing the recording, but actually these values go down. So they are definitely picking up this sort of this air quality index. So what I'm looking at is not so much the big AQI, but it's more like the formaldehyde and the TVOC value, which is more like an indication for me that, I've probably spent too much time in this room and it's time to just go out, let some fresh air in, even though I do have ventilation in this room, but probably it's just not enough if I'm just staying here for a longer period of time. Okay, cool. And let me just show you, like, if I just breathe on this device, then these values start to go crazy. So already the TVOC and the formaldehyde is in orange, and now the CO2 is also orange, and there is also a little bit of CO as well, which quickly goes away. And you can see that the air quality has gone up, but it hasn't gone up much because the particulate matter hasn't really risen. It was mostly the CO2, and then as soon as it's falling back down, you can see the air quality is slowly reducing as well. And of course, because I was like breathing into it, and you know, I had coffee and then maybe there is, you know, so much stuff in my breath and everything, you can see all these organic compounds are going up. So it is definitely measuring the, you know, the changes in the air quality, whether these values match up with, you know, the same values that you would get from a, you know, a more expensive and a more certified device. Probably it's not, but then, you know, this is sort of like a budget tool which still can give you all this information how the air quality changes in your room. Let me just show you the product I'm reviewing. So as you can see, that's the product. So that's the 15-in-1 for Must Tool, and at the moment it's $26.99. There is some flash deal, and as I said, there is a lot of you know, stuff in the documentation, but it doesn't really say what sensor they use for each of these you know, sensors that are included. And if you only just go back to gas analyzers here, you will see that there are quite a few different products that are sold. If you want, you know, there are slightly cheaper models which have less sensors in it. So you see that they don't measure so many, you know, different particulate matters in all the different sizes, but again, the main common sizes are there. And to be honest, I've always noticed that all the PMs, you know, move at pretty much at the same time. So I didn't see an awful lot of differences where, you know, only one, let's say the 2.5 PM is going to go up and then all the others are going to stay down. So maybe it's a type of sensor that they used. As I said, they might not be using exact method to, you know, measure all the different you know, particles, or just the, you know, the way we generate particular matter by, you know, human interaction, that it usually like a mix of all these different sizes and not any particular size at any moment. And then of course, if you start scrolling down, so there is a slightly more expensive one, and there are, you know, a lot more expensive as well. But again, the documentation is fairly basic in each of these listings. I mean, maybe there is going to be a little bit better. So I can't really tell, for example, why this this model cost so much more as for example the one that I bought. I mean, it still has all the different values, but they don't really say what type of sensor they have used, which you can, you know, verify and then, you know, check whether that's the, you know, like a much better sensor or much more accurate sensor. And again, if you are not looking for a, you know, scientific measurement, but you want to see if something are good or bad, then I'm pretty happy with the one that I have at the moment. Okay, let me go through the package and everything. So as I said, that's the device. I've already shown you the thing. So it has a particular model, and yeah, so everything is sealed. I was considering opening this up, but it's not possible. Everything is you know, it's probably ultrasonically welded, so if I need to get into it, probably it's going to be a destructive disassembly, which I don't want to do, because it seems to be a valuable product, so I don't want to break it. And as you can see, there is a single button on the side and the USB-C connection. And if you press this button, I've already mentioned that you can change the readings from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And of course, long pressing turns it off, and then another long press is going to turn the device on. It came in this very simple box, and as you can see, they are using this box for quite a few different models, you know, 6-in-1, 5-in-1, 3-in-1, MT28, and there is nothing really in the box. It just there's some padding material and a generic USB-C, USB-A to USB-C cable, and the documentation is also a fairly simple Chinese English documentation. So one side is Chinese and the other side is English. You can see that they already printed this for a few, well, sorry, no, this is the same product, but then it shows how the screen is different if, you know, like a red, amber, and sorry, green, amber, and red. And if I open up the documentation, it talks about, like, you know, how you link it to the Tuya Smart application, which is, you know, just standard stuff, and then, you know, some settings. But I think what's important is probably this one, which talks about the measurement details. So I don't even know if these ranges are relevant or the precision is, you know, anything good. And of course, you don't really know if, you know, these are the real numbers, to be honest. But anyway, it seems to be working. At least you can tell the trend, and you can see the different thresholds, how it changes from green to orange to red. And of course, when something goes to red, this device starts beeping. I mean, it just didn't start beeping right now, because it definitely should be beeping. I was using it today and it was like beeping when I was welding in the garage with the door shut, and I thought that the CO2 is going to go up because I was using a MIG welder with the CO2 gas, but it was actually the particulate matter, because you know, once you start welding, all these fumes go out, and probably there is some fine materials which, you know, sometimes you can even smell. So there was nothing organic, obviously, but then, you know, from the fume, the PM, basically all the PM readings started to go up, and you will see some videos of that a little bit later. And that's the stand. So in the second box, I just got this stand, a very basic stand. It's very lightweight. I had to add these feet so it doesn't scratch the table, but you can use this to just keep this upright, and yeah, it works just fine. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that it looks like that you will see in the app that I can set a sleep timer on this. So once this sleep timer is elapsed, then this device turns off. So it turns off completely. But it only turns off when it's on battery power. And if it's on main, so if the USB is connected, then it turns off the screen, but it's still measuring and you can see the values in your phone. So just keep in mind that if you want continuous measurement or continuous monitoring in any particular room, that it needs to be plugged in. But if you only want to use it occasionally to measure a certain event or a certain, you know, when you go somewhere, do something, and you want to keep it with you, then the battery will keep it running for a couple of hours without any issues. But in that case, you might have to just to go and then, you know, click on the button to wake it up. Otherwise, it's going to sleep and it's not going to measure anything. So let me show you how it works in the Tuya app. It's going to be very simple. Setting this up in Tuya was very easy. You just click and then you just use the add device, and here, so this doesn't have any QR code, so you just use the normal process where it waits for the device to be found, and then you provide your Wi-Fi name and the password, and it's going to connect. So that's how it's going to look like. So it says MT15/MT29, and then when you open it, it shows all the values that you see on the screen. And yeah, so it has 3 functions. It has a time, so you can set up timers, so you can use it as a, you know, just a simple timer. I haven't used it, but you have 3 different timers, and then you set them up, and then it's going to give you like a beeping sound when, you know, something happens. Yeah. And then you also have this record function where it basically just shows you a graph of all the things that it measures. The only thing I noticed that it doesn't really store a lot of information. So you will see that these graphs are very, you know, basic. They don't seem to have a lot of points. So I think what they do is they measure high and low values, and then it just creates a graph between them. So I think this was probably like when I was doing this welding earlier today. So there was like a high value, and it was the same for PM and the TVOC. So the navigation on this is a little bit clunky. So you just have to, like, I don't know why it refreshes so slowly, and you can't really scroll this one. So you just have to go through all the ones in order to get to the CO or the, the formaldehyde value. So I don't think this graph functionality is very useful. It's definitely not very useful to see, like quick changes. Maybe for a long-term measurement it could be useful, but yeah, it's a nice thing, but probably this is not the main thing. And it doesn't look like that you can export the data, because then, these are just settings. Oops, what happened? Yeah. So, yeah, it's there, but yeah, it's not that useful. Okay, going back, and then the last functionality is in the settings. So you can change the unit of the temperature as well, and that's the sleep timer. So At most you can set it to 100 seconds. So that means that if it's not plugged, either if it's plugged in or not plugged in, it will keep the screen on for 100 seconds and then it's going to go off. And as I said, if it's on battery, it's going to turn off. If it's connected, then it will just dim the screen or turn the screen off. And oops. And then you can also set the values. Sorry, these are the alarms for the different values, and you can only set alarms to these. So, and I mentioned previously that the alarms come when it goes to like orange or red. No, the alarms come when these values are reached. So you can see that you can set an alarm to CO2, CO, PM 2.5, and formaldehyde. And all the others will just, you know, show the numbers, they change colors, but they're not going to send you an alarm. And that's pretty much it about the, you know, the app. It's, you know, it's not a big functionality, but at least it allows you to, you know, monitor something remotely. And of course, these are available in the scenes as well. So let's say when the device status changes and this one, and you can see that you can set an alarm whenever any of the values that you see on the screen changes. So let's say TVOC and then less than equals. So you can create a functionality and then so create a scene, and then if any of these values change, then let's say you can start a fan or something like that. And of course, and also if you do the other way around, so if you have a scene which does something, then what you can do with this sensor, smart control single device, and this one, and for example, you can change the alarm volume, or you can, you know, turn the alarm on and off, or you can, well, I would say probably these are the most useful ones. So let's say you have this plugged in, you know, 24/7, then you can just quickly create a scene that enables the alarm in the morning and then disables it overnight, so you don't get the alarms overnight, or maybe the other way around if you want that. So yeah, I mean, the functionality is there, you can set it up, and that's definitely a plus. And you know, some of these scenarios actually do make sense. So I think finally I want to talk about a couple of different experiments that I did. So the first and probably the most useful experiment is that I have this big, you know, glass vase for, you know, flowers. It's very tall and it's fairly wide. So what I figured is that I'm going to put a candle, and then I put this air quality sensor, and I put the whole vase on top of it. So obviously the candle still keeps burning, but as it uses up the oxygen under the whole, you know, the glass dome, then eventually it's going to extinguish itself. And then I noticed that when it, you know, it starts extinguishing itself, then it also creates a lot of, well, not a lot of, but it creates some fumes. You know, when you blow the candle, and it creates some fumes. So it was really, really interesting because, you know, in the beginning, nothing really changes because the candle lights, and then obviously all that hot air which contains all the CO2 and probably some particulate matter, it rises up and then it collects on the top of the vase. But then after some time, yeah, I think it was like maybe 5, I mean, you can see the timestamp, but in 5 minutes, then I think first it was the PM values which started to go absolutely crazy. So probably all the you know, fumes and everything, because they are heavier than air, they started to settle first. And then again, after a couple of minutes, I noticed that the CO2 started to go crazy. So again, probably the hot air was starting to cool down, and because CO2 is heavier than air, it was again starting to settle and come to the bottom of this whole glass dome. And that's when the device started to pick up both the CO2 and the CO was going, you know, going up like crazy. Like everything was red. I think I did this test a couple of different times, and I think especially the first was really, really good. But I recorded it with a GoPro, which I just realized that it cannot really focus that close. So I repeated the test again when I was using my camcorder to record it. And it was interesting because when I used the new like a brand new small tea candle, which has a bigger wick, then there was more fumes and there was more, not only CO2, but also CO, so carbon monoxide. So both of the values were like going crazy. And then I tried to repeat the whole thing again after an hour, And obviously the wick burned down. It was a much smaller wick, and it still produced PM values and also CO2, but it wasn't that crazy after all. I mean, they gone up, but it wasn't that immediate red and everything is red. So that was very interesting. I mean, you can see the footage for both of them on the left. So that was a very interesting exercise. The other thing I did is I turned this bowl upside down. I mean, well, sorry, the normal way up. And I put the air quality sensor right in the bottom. And I have this CO2 soda maker. And so that has a canister which has CO2 in it. So I thought I'm going to just let some CO2 into this Wase. And obviously CO2 is heavier, so it should settle at the bottom where the air quality sensor is. And I did this test and I didn't see a dramatic change in the CO2. So I don't know what happened. Maybe because it was the CO2 was coming out fast from this canister, and it was just, there was a lot of air disturbance, and then it was mixing with regular air, so there wasn't a lot of CO2 which was settling at the bottom of the Wase. Yeah, so I just couldn't get it to work. And also I did one more test where I've taken this sensor out to my to the garage, where I had the CO2 canister that I use for welding. And that again, I opened this up, I held it to the sensor, and the readings were just not going up. And I can't explain why. Maybe there was too much airflow. There was a lot of mixing with the regular air in the garage, and that was just not a high enough concentration enough for this to show. I mean, definitely it was going up, but I would have expected to go up hit the roof and then go absolutely crazy, but it didn't. So then the last test is, well, I don't have a video footage of that, but only pictures. So I had to do some welding, and I was welding in a garage again. So I'm using MIG with CO2 as a shielding gas. And is that TIG? MIG. And I had the garage door down because it's really cold outside. It's also cold in the garage. And I've put the device on the table, so you can see the measurements in the beginning. And then I took the measurements, and I also taken a photo right after I finished welding. I welded for an hour or something like that. And you can notice that again, CO2 wasn't really going up. So after that, it looks like it's not really using a lot of CO2. Whilst welding, it was more again the fumes and the particulate matter. And if you have welded, you probably know that there is always some fumes and probably some byproducts of the welding. Something gets evaporated, that probably creates some smoke, and this device was definitely picking that up. And then the third picture was taken probably half an hour after that. I thought that maybe if the air settles a little bit in the room, then I would notice something different. Maybe the PM values would change, or the CO2 would change. That was a bit of a change, but it wasn't really dramatic. And at the end, I just opened the garage door, I let some fresh air in, and you can see that pretty much immediately, I mean, after a minute or so, all these values settled down to sort of normal base values. Everything was green again, and there wasn't any contamination shown in the garage anymore. So no PM, and there was no real elevated CO2 either. So I think that was an interesting experiment, and especially if you are working in confined places, then this is a really good product. I mean, for example, this welding application, definitely CO2 or anything which uses up oxygen, and probably if it gets released with the CO2 or carbon oxide, then probably this is a really good device to show you that, and it's going to give you beepings and everything that something goes wrong, so you can't really ignore. The same with the PM2 as well. And if you are working with organic matter, then again you have the formaldehyde and the TVOC, which is going to give you some very could be early warning that something is going wrong. And maybe you just need to open up the windows and then let some fresh air in and make sure that you have sufficient ventilation. And I think in retrospect, given the fact that it costs about I think it was $26 at the moment. I mean, it's not in the same class as professional devices, which measure either CO or particulate matter or CO2, but it's definitely able to give you an indication, even if you are not really interested in the particular numbers, but you are interested in something going up or, you know, again, settling down, if something is in the red or an amber. You don't even have to look at the numbers. You just quickly look at the screen and then, you know, is anything which is in red? Oh, then, you know, if something is in amber, then you know that something is elevated, but it's still, you know, sort of okay. And if everything is green, you know that, you know, everything is fine. There is nothing that I need to worry about. So for this price, I think this is a useful unit. And I'm happy I had the chance to test it, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to use it, you know, maybe not all the time, but occasionally I would have this sitting on the shelf, probably turn off, and if I'm doing something where I'm wary about the air quality, I would just turn it on, bring it with me. The fact that it's battery powered, I think it's an ideal device for these type of use cases. So if you are interested in picking one of these up, there is going to be links in the video description. But I think that should be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next video.